What's cracking? Welcome to Griffin and Bass. He's Griffin, I'm Bass. Before we get into everything regarding the Detroit Lions and the end of their preseason and cuts already been made, upcoming weekend of Michigan and Michigan State football, got to remind you guys to like and subscribe everywhere you can find us. That'd be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We also got full episodes on YouTube and DetroitSportsNation.com. Ryan, this Sunday, everyone who had CBS as part of their cable television package, or Paramount if you had the streaming devices, got to witness the Detroit Lions play, for lack of a better term, the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first half. The first half was where the starters played, not even the entire first half, but at least most of it. So we got to see, from the Pittsburgh side of the ball, a bunch of guys that a bunch of us will be drafting in fantasy. And on the Lions side of the ball, one or two guys that we might get drafted. There was no Jared Goff. There was no DeAndre Swift. There was no Jamal Williams. We did see the wide receivers out there. Amon-Ra St. Brown was out there. Try to get the name right. But Tim Boyle was
whoop your ass. You
right.
His name wrong.
Right. Tim Boyle was supposed to play the entire first half. David Blau was supposed to play the entire second half. Well, Tim Boyle really sputtered in his time in the first half, and so Dan Campbell switched things up and brought Blau in to see if he could do any better. He did do better by the definition of the word, but that was about it. He didn't really light the world on fire. I think personally he proved that he deserves to be the backup over Boyle, but I also think neither one of them should be the backup for the Detroit Lions. That was my biggest takeaway. Obviously, the focal point was on the quarterbacks as well as the running backs. We got to see a nice battle for who's going to be 3 and is there going to be a 4 or a 5 when it comes to our running back room. I think there should at least be 4. But before I get into all of mine, what'd you think of what you witnessed?
Yeah, it was a bad game. I thought it was going to be a bad game. You know, Jared Goff didn't play. Jamal Williams didn't play. DeAndre Swift didn't play. I don't believe Michael Brockers played on the defensive side of the ball either. And the Steelers, they had a QB competition going of their own, so they were going to play both the quarterbacks that might end up starting for their team. Najee Harris got in there, TJ Watt got in there. Harrison, Watt both left the game with an injury. So if you're a Lions fan, that's the one positive thing that you can take from the game, is not those guys getting injured, but that they went through the entire preseason pretty healthy. I don't know that there was a single injury to a Detroit Lion player, and certainly not one that will be of any consequence on the season. I mean, there were guys that we, of course, knew were going to be injured that we haven't seen yet. Jamison Williams, Josh Pashal, I think is how you say his name, the second-round pick. But we already knew those guys weren't going to be available to us. And both the quarterbacks kind of showed that they shouldn't be backup quarterbacks in the NFL, right? And they both had game time last year in the actual season, and they didn't look very good then either. So for the Lions, for the backup quarterback route, and it sounded like Dan Campbell got some clarification, I guess, like just based on what he said in the press conference. The only clarification I could see is that we're not going with either one of these guys because they were both, just honest to God, that bad. And with the backup quarterback situation, at first I thought, and I even said it on here, I thought both the guys would end up making the roster, and now there's conflicting trains of thought. Are both of them going to make it? Are neither of them going to make it? And they're going to look elsewhere to try and find a backup quarterback. Carson Strong got released today, got cut. A rookie quarterback, an undrafted rookie quarterback, I believe. But he was somebody who, at least at the start of the college season last year, was thought that he could potentially be a number 1 pick. College season didn't work out like that. And obviously he didn't show what he needed to show in the preseason. But I'd rather take a swing on a guy like that than stick with, Blau or Boyle.
I'm 100% with you on that. I will say Blau looked much more comfortable than Boyle. To me, watching them play all preseason and watching them play last season too, Blau just looks like he at least kinda belongs on the field. Boyle doesn't look like he belongs at all. He doesn't look like he knows what he's doing when actual game pressure gets involved. He might be wonderful in practice. Apparently, he's got a strong arm and all that stuff. He's got the size that people like in a quarterback, 6'4".
Anti-Drew Stanton. Terrible in practice.
You wouldn't know.
Lit it up in the games.
Right? You wouldn't know he's 6'4" by the number of times his ball got batted by defensive linemen, but apparently he's tall. Blau just every time I watch him, he just looks like he's more comfortable in a game than Tim Boyle does to me. So I would give it to Blau off of what I watched. If my options were, it's one of these two. I have to take one of these two. I'm taking David Blau over Tim Boyle. He just looks more comfortable and ready in the game. I don't care that Tim Boyle's a noon shooter. When the game's at 8 o'clock, I don't need a noon shooter. So, to me, David Blau won it out of those two. I'm 100% with you on finding somebody else. I would love Carson Strong. I wanted the Lions to draft Carson Strong at the end of the draft. I said, go take a swing on this guy. He was good in college. He's got a strong arm. He has the right mentality. He has the right size they're looking for in a quarterback. Everything I saw from Carson Strong in college told me to take a swing on this guy late in the NFL draft if no one else had already picked him up by the 7th round. Obviously, it didn't happen. But he's available. And the good thing with the Lions is the waiver wire is coming, and we're number 2. Jacksonville is number 1, and we're number 2 as far as the waiver wire is concerned. So we really have our pick of the litter of whoever is available as far as quarterbacks is concerned. That would not include Jimmy Garoppolo, who has decided to, well, actually, I think the Niners decided for him that no one wants to pick up Jimmy Garoppolo's contract, and so no one wants to trade with us. No one wants to make a deal. So we're just going to have him as a backup. Even though this is Trey Lance's team, but we're going to have Jimmy Garoppolo as a backup, which is a nice thing to say. We'll see if it actually is true. We'll see what happens when Trey Lance actually struggles, if they run to Jimmy G or not. But for everyone else out there that's a quarterback in the NFL that is not on a team, the Lions really have their pick.
They do. And they saw some of Mason Rudolph on Sunday against the Steelers, who people have been wanting them to, be connected to as well. And apparently the Steelers have already gotten some inquiries on Mason Rudolph. We weren't able to see what teams, I guess, had asked for him. And, even Jimmy G, it's kind of what I thought the 49ers should do, and I think the Lions still could make a play for him if Jared Goff goes down with an injury. Because they did restructure his contract, so my guess would be that it's not, he's not making as much as he was before. So if Jared Goff goes down, then Jimmy G's value obviously goes up, which is one of the reasons I think the Niners did this, was to give themselves a little bit of insurance in case Trey Lance gets hurt, as well as they know one of these starting quarterbacks is going to go down at some point during the season. And if it's a team that feel like they can win, then you go ahead and obviously give Jimmy G a call. And say the Lions start out, 2-2, right? And then Goff goes down. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they made a call to the Niners saying, hey, what's it going to take to get, Garoppolo over here? And I guess I wouldn't rule out Jimmy G to the Lions just yet. I'd rule it out, today. But just at some point throughout the season, I think the trade deadline is week 10. I might be a little bit off. It might be week 8, somewhere around. That's like the middle of the NFL season. But I wouldn't rule that out. I really wouldn't rule out anything with the Lions QB carousel right now, honestly, because there's just, I think both the guys played so bad, and they've been so bad throughout last year and this year, that when Campbell says they had clarity, maybe this is just me hoping, but I really think he's talking about we need to just find somebody else completely, because neither of these guys are it.
Well, if that is the case, he's got about a week, because the cuts are done by tomorrow evening, Tuesday evening, and the season starts not this weekend, but the next weekend. So he doesn't have much time to figure it out if he is really going to just wipe the slate clean of our backup quarterbacks altogether and go find someone else. But if it's one of the two that we have to keep, I think it's going to end up being David Blau. The other battle that really stood out in this game against the Steelers was the running back battle. And we saw Justin Jackson, we saw Craig Reynolds, we saw Jamar Jefferson. Jackson, 8 rushes for 44 yards, 2 catches for 39. Reynolds, 6 rushes for 31 yards, 2 catches for 13. Jamar Jefferson, 6 rushes for 28 yards. 27 of them was on the draw play on 3rd and 17. So his numbers don't look quite as impressive outside of that one run for 27 yards. So what did you take from this? You and I both are of the same mind as far as, Justin Jackson. We'd love for him to be involved in the mix. But what did you see, and what do you think is going to end up being the case?
I think Justin Jackson's going to still end up making the team. Like, I hope so. We went through his career numbers the last week, right? It's almost at 5 yards a carry for his career. And he's just a guy who's steady. Obviously he's not world-beating, which is why he's been released by 2 teams already and is on his 3rd team. I think Reynolds is probably going to end up being the odd man out. I just have the feeling that the Lions like Jamar Jefferson. I feel like they liked him last year, when he came in and he was able to be sort of productive, at least when their running backs were dropping like flies, and Jefferson was able to come in behind an offensive line who had good pieces, but with injuries was still in and out and not all the way together. So I think they like Jefferson. I think they like Jackson. At least I like Jackson. So I think Reynolds is probably going to be the guy that is the odd man out in Detroit. But I wouldn't be. Reynolds, I guess he could make his way on an NFL team or just whichever guy's cut. But they could also, of course, just be like re-signed to the practice squad, which even going back to Blau and Boyle, if either of those guys are released or both of those guys are released, I wouldn't be surprised if they were kept on the practice squad as well.
What about Godwin Igwebuike?
No, I don't think anybody else wants them.
He rarely got any run against the Steelers. He had 1 rush. I think he had 1 catch. I know they're looking at him for special teams as well. Is it just a foregone conclusion he's on the 53-man roster?
Who was that? Sorry,
Godwin Igwebuike.
I hope so. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion by any means, because I think they're still trying to find their kick returner, and if Igwebuike is going to be on the team, my guess is it would be because of his kick return, punt return prowess. But if they're not using him for that, then that makes his job security way shakier.
Right. That's why, because he didn't really get much run in the offense. I think he was back there for returns. I think they mixed. Was it him and Maurice Alexander? I think it was both of them. They took turns on this one. I can't remember. I wasn't focusing so much on special teams. I was really focusing on the running backs and the quarterbacks in this one. So I didn't see too much, but just looking through the stats at least, I didn't see much when it came to Godwin. So I didn't know if there was something that just feels like it's a foregone conclusion. He's going to be on the roster in some way, shape, or form. They're just not sure if they're going to use him specifically for special teams and maybe throw him in the mix a little bit here or there on the offense, which obviously was the case before.
Yeah, I don't think any of these guys are a foregone conclusion. I'm sure we might get to it, but even Jared Davis, I thought he'd probably at least make the team. Not that I was so happy about it, because I don't think he's a good linebacker. And then apparently he was one of the first ones cut, I guess, or at least one of the first ones that we got reports of him being cut. So you really just never know, especially with a team like the Lions, where they're trying to improve from just every angle, really. And I think a lot of these guys are super close in the coaching and team evaluations, and it just kind of comes down to preference as a fan of which one you want to keep. But I don't know that there's a giant talent difference or even potential talent difference in a lot of these guys, a lot of these bubble guys.
Yeah, especially with Jared Davis. It's when you are a top 20 pick in the NFL draft, it makes a little bit more noise when you're cut before the NFL season even officially begins. So no surprise that he got a whole lot of headlines when it came to him being let go. He was not the only one let go. Khalil Pimpleton, who gave us that great juggling act on Hard Knocks. Man just can't catch a football when it counts. He had some catches, but these ones in the end zone, he can't come up with them. Look, was Blau's pass fantastic? No. But was it catchable? Yeah, it was around his knees in the front part of the end zone where he was. It was catchable. He didn't catch it. He had one of the corner of the end zone I think in last week's game against the Colts. Didn't catch it. You got to at least come up with one of these to give them a reason to keep you. When they see that when it counts, you're not stepping up, it's hard to keep you, even as much as we liked him. And I liked him a lot from what I saw him on Hard Knocks, at least, the little bit that we saw of him, the interview with him when they're talking to him. I liked the kid, and I hope that he gets picked up somewhere for a practice squad. I don't want to see him out of football. He's fast as hell, and seems like a good kid. So, I'd like to see him somewhere else. Someone like Devin Funchess, been around the league for a while as a wide receiver, tried to make it as a tight end. Lions have enough tight ends. Devin Funchess didn't move the needle, so that wasn't happening. Kendall Lamb, if all of you are doing the same thing, Ryan and I going, who? He didn't make the team either. And the big one, obviously, that is going to upset the masses of Kool-Aid drinking Lions fans, Tom Kennedy is not on the roster for the Detroit Lions.
No, and we talked about him a couple weeks ago as opposed to which receivers might make it over him. And I didn't think Kennedy was going to make the roster, but his performances in the preseason, I don't know that he could have done a whole lot more. He was out there catching touchdowns, unlike Pimpleton, but I guess the team just needed to see, saw what they needed to see. Say a guy like Quintez Cephas ends up making the roster, he's done better in actual NFL games at this point in his career than Tom Kennedy has. And I think that is important for just fans to remember, right, when they're watching preseason games, especially of guys who have in-game NFL experience, is when the coaches are evaluating these players, they're not solely looking at what is happening this training camp or this preseason. They also have 17 games of the previous season to go off of, and in the case of a guy like Cephas or Kennedy, I'm sure they didn't play in all 17 games. Kennedy certainly didn't, but they have a whole prior seasons of knowledge as well. So we looked at the preseason and we're like, oh man, Tom Kennedy's going off, but maybe he was just facing more of an uphill battle than any of us realized because we were so focused on what we saw, in the 3 preseason games that he was at.
The kid can play football. I'm not going to argue that. We got to watch him. If you're pulling up against second string and third stringers in the NFL, these are still guys that can play football. They just can't play it at the top level that the NFL has to offer, which is why they're not first string guys. I hope they keep Tom Kennedy as a practice squad guy for one, depth in the wide receiver position where guys get hurt all the time. It's a very, it's a position that's easily injury prone. These guys are running full speed and getting hit. But also to work against our secondary, which is absolute trash. And so to get to go against a guy that at least shows that he can catch the ball when it's in his area, and for the most part, he did. If it was anywhere near him, he was coming up with it for the most part. And so to have someone like that to go against can only make our terrible secondary at least a little bit better. So I do hope that he gets, picked up for the practice squad. I won't be surprised if a team that's in need of wide receivers really goes and just grabs him, and makes him a better offer than the Lions can offer from the practice squad position. I liked what I saw. Obviously, look, 2 touchdowns in one game, 100-plus yards in another. But, 2 out of the 3 games, he absolutely balled out. So I don't know what more the kid could have done. It really was that much of an uphill battle. And it's just, like you said, he's, 27 years old, 26, 27 years old, been around for a little bit now doing this. So it's just, there were just names ahead of him, whether they were hurt and not even playing, like a Jamison Williams, who obviously isn't going to get cut, or it's just they've been around and done it for a while in a Josh Reynolds or a Quintez Cephas. It's just, it was too much for him to overcome. I hope they find a way to keep him in one way or another, but I won't be surprised also if a team that needs bodies will snatch him up because he's shown that he has the ability to catch the ball in an NFL game.
It was going to go to the Patriots.
They need wide receivers, so I wouldn't be surprised. What did surprise me, our offensive line. Brian, this offensive line has been touted all off season. Oh, they're going to be a top 10 offensive line. Watch out. We're going to run it down people's throats. Did you watch the game against the Steelers? Because I didn't see a damn thing that showed me that this offensive line is a top 10 offensive line. I saw flags being called for holding. Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson. I saw both of our quarterbacks sacked. I saw a rushing attack that didn't do much until the second stringers and third stringers got in the game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, look, I understand it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're known for their defense more than anything else throughout their entire history of the NFL. But for a team that's supposed to have a solid offensive line, I didn't see it on Sunday.
No, it didn't show up on Sunday, and they were going against, T.J. Watt, at least for part of the time, and a defense that is pretty good in the Steelers. And again, they were without their quarterback and their two best running backs, who I think, while the offensive line can still protect, if you have a worse quarterback back there who's not making decisions as fast, or even a running back who's not, as good as hitting the holes like Swift and Williams are, it can make the offensive line look worse than it was. I still don't really have any concerns about the offensive line going into the regular season. They didn't look good in the preseason game, but again, it was the preseason game, and all of these guys, in their own respect, have had some pretty good success in the NFL. Obviously you had Sewell, who was good last year, Decker, who's been a solid tackle basically his entire career, Frank Ragnow, who's one of the better centers in the NFL, Vaitai, who struggled with the Lions when he first got there, but then, I think he's going to be a little bit better now that he's playing the guard spot instead of a tackle. And Jonah Jackson, who was a rookie last year, who's probably the weak link of the offensive line, but he was defined for, a rookie lineman last year, and he projects to only get better. So I still don't have any concerns really about the offensive line, and I do think the offense can be pretty good. I think some people are hyping it up to be maybe a little bit more than what we should be expecting, because we still do have Jared Goff under center. But I think the offense can be pretty good, and if they are going to be any good, it's going to be because the offensive line is giving Goff time and is creating holes for Swift and Williams.
All right, look, man, I'm your co-host. You my co-host. You tell that four-legged furball there to keep quiet, because it's a two-person show, not a three-person show. Anyway,
he has some thoughts on the offensive line.
Apparently. So one thing that did get answered, we know who our other cornerback's going to be, Jeff Okudah, who, look, when Trubisky was in there, he had a tackle for loss, and he broke up the pass on third down. It's what you want your cornerbacks to do. So he has solidified himself. He is going to be the starting cornerback for the Detroit Lions. So that is one thing answered. It's kind of what I expected. I know that it was a battle with him and Harris, but the whole time in my mind, I kept thinking it's Okudah's job to lose. And I think it's a good sign. Obviously, it's a great sign for him, but I think it's a good sign for the Lions that Okudah didn't lose the job.
Yeah, it's a good sign. It might be a bad sign that Will Harris probably isn't any good after converting over from safety. But there were, I guess, reports today that Okudah might have taken over as the first cornerback on the depth chart, even higher than Oruwariye, who obviously was not fighting for the spot. So you figured the cornerback one spot was his. But I guess Okudah's been really impressive lately. He's still gotten beat a couple times in the preseason, but he's also made some really nice plays in the preseason. So I just think overall the Lions' secondary isn't going to be any good, but I guess it is better for the future that Okudah won the job and didn't lose it, because if he lost it, I think you would have Lions fans in just mass hysteria if the number 3 overall pick from 3 years ago was not on the team.
Yeah.
Or not on the team, but, not started.
Yeah. Well, we now have just under 2 weeks until the NFL season kicks off. We are welcoming the Philadelphia Eagles to Ford Field. We have plenty of time to talk about that matchup, so we are not going to get into any of that right now. Instead, we're going to drop down to college, because the official first week of college football is coming up this weekend. This past weekend was week 0, but we did get to see some traditional, college football hecticness. We saw Nebraska be Nebraska and blow a game that they probably shouldn't have blown, and they got to do it in front of the fans of Dublin, Ireland. I thought that was very cool to watch. And Hawaii just got absolutely blowed out to end the night. Vanderbilt look a lot better. They'll start off week 0 this year than they did last year, putting an absolute 60-point beatdown on the Warriors.
Breaking news: the Lions are releasing Tim Boyle.
There you go.
By Tom Pelissero.
All right. Well, it's not going to be breaking for everyone who watches us tomorrow when this comes out. But
breaking live.
It was breaking live for us while we were bringing our show to you guys. So that is exactly what I expected. Blau just looked better than Boyle. He still doesn't look good, and I'm not saying he looks good, but he looked better than Boyle, and that to me wasn't even in question watching them on Sunday against the Steelers. Let's get down to our Spartans and Wolverines. So the 8th-ranked Wolverines will begin, according to Jim Harbaugh, with 2 quarterbacks, Cade McNamara as well as J.J. McCarthy. They are both going to start a game. So Cade is going to start this week's opener against Colorado State. McCarthy is going to start the following week against Hawaii. And they're both going to see time in both games. So you're not going to see Cade from beginning to end in week 1 and JJ from beginning to end in week 2, at least according to what Harbaugh is saying right now. Colorado State coming to Michigan. Remember, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Michigan does not leave Ann Arbor for the first month of the season. They don't leave at all in September. They ain't going anywhere. They're staying in AA. So expect them to be around. Colorado State, this is really interesting. At least I found this interesting, Ryan. To end the season last year, Colorado State lost to Nevada 52-10. And their AD, Joe Parker, apparently hated/loved the beatdown so much that he fired his head coach, Steve Adazio, and he hired Nevada's head coach, Jay Norvell. So he brought in the guy that absolutely whooped him to end the year before, and they're bringing in his air raid offense. Norvell has been he's been a staple in football for a long time. Played in Iowa, had stops in the Big Ten, the Big 12, the Pac-12. Had a 6-year stint in the NFL as well. Went 33-26 over 5 seasons at Nevada. Went 8-4 last year for Nevada, and his air raid offense is coming to Ann Arbor to take on a Michigan defense that's going to have some questions, Ryan. They, look, we got one of them on our team, Hutchinson. Ojabo's gone as well. Daxon Hill gone as well. So, I mean, there's going to be a new defense for Michigan, and they're going to have to go against an offense which apparently enjoys airing it out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect them to have any trouble with Colorado State, because their offense is one that might air it out as well. And the defense should be fine, at least for this game, when they face some real competition. I guess who knows. But I don't think they're going to have any problem with what Colorado State is bringing to the table, even if it's a team that likes to throw it around a whole lot. Last year we saw Western Kentucky give Michigan State's secondary a problem, but they have a quarterback who is, at least on an NFL roster, or was as of yesterday. I don't think Zappe has been released, but it's a guy who got drafted into the NFL, and a team that, you talk about air raid, I think they probably passed the ball more than anybody in the country last year. So it should be a cakewalk for Michigan. And they are doing the weird dual starting quarterback thing. And then I think Harbaugh expanded on it today, where he said both quarterbacks are going to play in both games. So just because Cade is starting the game against Colorado State doesn't mean necessarily that he's going to finish it. And JJ, I guess, will get some time in there as well, which I just don't understand. Like, I don't know why you would do it that way. Just name your quarterback or let them both play, because you would think the idea of it is to try and level the playing field as much as you can, but that's, it's not really going to be level at all. Not that one of these defenses I don't think is going to be so much better than the other one, but like if you just let, if you're calling the game plan and Cade's handing the ball off 35 times because Michigan is just averaging 7 yards a rush like against Colorado State, there's not going to be a whole lot of point to him, throwing the ball. And then on the flip side of that, like when JJ gets in there, I'm not surprised that this game is 35-7 Michigan at halftime. So you throw JJ in there in the second half, and Harbaugh's not really one to kind of run up the score like that, right? So my guess is they would pull the different starters and, again, just hand the ball off. So say Cade got 3 passing touchdowns in the first half, and then in the second half you let JJ only throw 9 passes because you're just up by so much. So again, I don't understand it. I don't know what it's going to show, really, and if one of these guys is really going to be able to win the starting quarterback job going against Colorado State and Hawaii. But I guess that is what they're going with. So it is just something that we will continue to watch and talk about, because it's, it's not an issue now, but it's certainly a topic of conversation.
Obviously, I mean, you're talking about one of the top name teams in the country year in and year out, University of Michigan, and the way they played last year, they were one of the top teams in the country. And so when you have that happening, and you have most people presume is the starter for a team that doesn't throw the ball that much. I mean, Cade, for all of the, the greatness that Michigan had last year, Cade only had 2,500 yards. He had 15 touchdowns and 6 interceptions while completing 64% of his passes. So they're not slinging the ball around the field. Like you said, they have a running game that they focus on. And while losing Haskins as part of that running game, they're going to have to find a way to make up for. I don't know how much of that is going to be through the air as much as it is going to be looking for their next guy to be part of their ground and pound. And you've got, for lack of a better term, 2 weak opponents that you're going against that should give you some time to figure out which of these guys really wants it. And it seems like they both want it, which is why Harbaugh is having a hard time, apparently, making this decision, is that these 2 guys have made it very tough on them. And it's hard for him to say that, Cade, who really led them as far as quarterback to the Big Ten championship, to the college football playoff, is going to be the guy that you now say is the bench, is the second guy. It's hard to make that argument when the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and on the field, Michigan looked really good. But then you've also got J.J. McCarthy, who has been highly touted ever since before he came to Michigan, number 25 overall recruit in his class. And he's done all the right things apparently as well. So it's going to make it hard on Harbaugh. And he figures this is the best way to find out who really wants this, who's really going to perform. But like you said, if they are busy grounding the ball and beating up the defensive line, and the quarterback doesn't have to do that much, you're right. You're not going to learn that much from your quarterbacks.
And also, they're both probably going to play well. So then what are you going to do? Are you going to, keep it going into the third game? Or even if one of them doesn't, even if one of them doesn't play well, say they have a rough day at the office and they have 2 picks or something, but Michigan still wins the game by 40 points. Is Cade McNamara throwing 2 interceptions and one is tipped and one is just a bad throw? Does that mean that he's just now a worse quarterback for J.J. McNamara the rest of the season? And I don't understand how the decision's going to be made. Obviously, that's not up to for me to know how it's going to be made, but the whole situation just seems silly, right? I think at least what I would do in this situation is just tell the team, right? Hey, look, we have 2 guys that we really think can be the starting quarterback for this team. We feel really good about both of them, but me and the coaching staff just feel like we have a better shot with X guy, right? And then that's it. And you tell your team this is who our starting quarterback is, and if he goes down, then you have complete faith in the other guy to come in and take the job over, because I don't know, what else do you do? I would just like to have
secret
a starting
ballot
quarterback named. I would like to have a starting quarterback named before the first game of the season, and for these games, it's certainly not going to matter who Michigan's quarterback is. Probably any of the first 4 games, and then they end up playing Iowa, and you might not even know, because in the third game is against UConn. They're going to blow the doors off UConn too, and neither of these quarterbacks are probably going to struggle in any of these games. So you're just going to keep kicking the can down the road of your quarterback controversy. And you just never know what's going to happen. You even look into the future. If this ends up being Cade McNamara's job for the entire season, he can still come back next year. And this isn't a guy that is high on the NFL draft boards. Now maybe him and Harbaugh already have had a conversation. Hey, as long as I get a 6-round evaluation, I'm going at the end of the year regardless, or something, right? That is obviously not something that we would know. So next year is JJ's year, anyway, or, have him and JJ had a conversation. JJ doesn't seem like the type of kid that would transfer, but has he told Harbaugh, like, hey, look, if Cade comes back and I don't win the job in 2023, like, I'm out of here, right? It would certainly make sense for him to leave if he's not the starting quarterback. Even this year, honestly, it still makes sense for him to leave, but especially next year. And I think you just create a whole situation and controversy that doesn't need to be created, right? I think these things would have eventually just played themselves out. And if you started, no matter which one you started, I guess, the other guy is eventually going to get hurt. If it's not for a whole game or a whole month, it's going to be for a series. It's going to be for 2 series, right? It's going to be for a quarter. One of these guys is going to go down, and then the other guy is going to have his chance to go into the game and play anyway. And through practice, they're still going to have their chance to take the job, and then you just kind of give it to whoever the better guy is. But apparently, they don't know who the better guy is yet.
A couple things.
Which
One,
I find hard to believe.
After 2 weeks, if you still don't know, you have a ballot from the whole team. Everyone writes on a piece of paper who they want a quarterback. They stick it in a box. They count the votes in front of everybody, and boom, done. There's your quarterback. Number 2, I think it also causes a problem where you have 2 guys that are playing not their best because they're not sure the job is theirs. To me, it's like you're driving down the road. You have no issues driving. All of a sudden, a cop gets on your ass. How's your driving? Now you start focusing on things that you really kind of take you away from being a natural driver. You're not sure you're doing everything correctly. All of a sudden, you might swerve a little bit in an area where you normally wouldn't because there's now pressure on you in a way that there really shouldn't be. And when you got 2 guys who are worthy of the starting job, because it sounds like they both are, but they're both so worried about not getting the job because they're worried they're going to make a mistake that costs them the job. I mean, just take a look at both of our backup quarterbacks in this last game against the Steelers. I hadn't seen either one of them play that bad until they knew it was their last chance. And in their last chance, neither one of them shined. I don't think it'll be the same thing as that, where it's quite that bad, but I think you're putting undue pressure on it by not naming a starting quarterback to start the year while also saying, look, they both deserve it. We're going with Cade because we won the Big Ten last year with Cade, and until he shows us otherwise, he's going to be our starting quarterback, and we're going to do it just like last year, where we're going to keep JJ in the mix because he does things differently than Cade does, and it's going to mix up the offense a little bit. Maybe not so much the way they did it last year, because there were definitely times where it was almost like killing the momentum by bringing JJ in, or killing JJ's momentum when they brought Cade back in. But there has to be something you got to figure out. Obviously, this is for guys who are much smarter than us, or at least better paid than us, to figure this out, because it ain't our job to do this stuff. Our job is just to complain about them doing it wrong, which is what they're doing. All right, enough Michigan talk. They'll be this weekend. We'll talk about them more on our next cast. We got to get to the other game, which is coming a lot quicker. It's basically Tuesday for the Michigan State Spartans because they ain't playing on Saturday, Ryan. They're playing on Friday. The Broncos, Western Michigan, coming to town, coming off an 8-5 season with head coach Tim Lester and offensive coordinator Mr. Thorne, our Thorne's father. So Ryan, Peyton Thorne, Michigan State quarterback, is gonna be ready for this Friday and the Western Michigan Broncos.
He should be, and I know Mel Tucker came out and said that he even talked to Peyton Thorne about going against his dad. I feel like it's probably unnecessary because his dad's not, like the defensive coordinator. I'm sure he can give the defensive coordinator some tips on what his son might struggle with, but at the same time, you're not going against him. Peyton Thorne's not a defensive player going against, his dad's quarterback or something. So there's not really that head-to-head matchup. It's cool that, that his dad is at Western Michigan, and obviously Jaden Reed was at Western Michigan before he transferred to Michigan State. So I'm sure some of his old teammates are on that, are on the Broncos still as well. I don't know. I don't really know what to expect from Michigan State. I expect them to win. They're 3-touchdown favorites in the game, but I don't know how the secondary is going to look. I feel like it'll probably look better than it actually is because I do expect Michigan State's front seven to be really good. And against a team like Western, where I feel like they could probably just overmatch overmatched their offensive line. The secondary is probably not going to have to do, so much hard work. It's like an outfielder when the pitcher's just striking everybody out, and then they don't have anything to do until they have to go up to take the at bat. And I expect Michigan State to roll in this game. I like that it's on Friday, so you get a little bit of Friday night appetizer before you watch the entire Saturday slate of games of college football. That part's cool, but I don't know. I don't think this game's really interesting besides the storyline of Thorne versus Thorne.
Well, I mean, look, last year the Broncos boasted the 12th ranked offense in the country, and they got a pretty good running back tandem in Sean Tyler and former Spartan Ladarius Jefferson. But they lose their quarterback, Caleb Ellaby, and they lost Sky Moore, stud wide receiver, who's now on, I think, the Kansas City Chiefs, unless he's been cut. So they've lost that part of that, that offense that took Pitt and beat Pitt, that's they had a lot of scoring ability last year, but you're replacing that quarterback with a redshirt freshman. You're replacing their stud wide receiver, but they still have a running game. And look, last year for Michigan State, that wasn't the thing you wanted to do. Running the ball on Michigan State generally was not a smart idea. The Spartans were pretty good at shutting it down. It really was the passing game was the way to beat Michigan State. But that's supposedly improved. Look, it can't be any worse. They were literally the worst in all of college football last year. And apparently, the latest word on the defensive backs at Michigan State. Ronald Williams is coming on as of late. Amari Speed has drawn pretty good reviews throughout fall camp as well. So God willing, it's going to be a lot better, not just a little bit better than it was last year. But it's going to be a test on both sides, at least. That'll be interesting to watch because you're going to have the young new quarterback and a new offense for him taking the reins of it, versus a secondary that had all the questions in the world because they were that bad last season.
They were bad, but again, I think the front seven is just going to be so very much improved that even if the secondary isn't improved, their weakness is going to be less devastating because I think they'll just have less to do. Not only in this game, just in the season overall, where the secondary still might hurt you, but I think more often than not, the front seven will be able to kind of mask whatever the secondary isn't able to do well. And if not, then it might be another long season on defense for Michigan State. There's some exciting, new things to watch for Michigan State for sure. Obviously, Jarek Broussard and Jalen Berger are the two transfer running backs. You get to see Jaden Reed again. You get to kind of see if Peyton Thorne has started to take that next step, because I do think he's a really good quarterback, but he had games last year where he wasn't very good. So can he just be more consistent and be better and really be one of the better quarterbacks in the country? I think he can. I think that he has that in him, and that would be pretty exciting if you're a Michigan State fan. Our tight end play should be better this year. I'm excited to see if Malik Carr can take another step after not being so featured last year, but he's a guy who they've kind of been hyping up for Camp 2. And then again, obviously the defense with the new transfers that they have, whether it's Bogle or Brule or Winman. I think there's just a lot that you can kind of look at on defense and be excited about. You already mentioned him, your speed, obviously. Xavier Henderson's coming back. So I do expect it to be a pretty nice win for Michigan State. I expect the atmosphere to be pretty good. It could be a night game in Spartan Stadium, and it's just going to be exciting. Some new juice for the football season. Probably won't start as well as last season did, where you had the 75-yard touchdown on the first play of the game. But you never know. Maybe they bring back their flea flicker, and it works again, and then everybody just goes crazy.
Yeah, more than that, I want to see consistency. This offense should score the ball almost every time it touches it against Western Michigan. I'm not going to say that for against Ohio State or other schools, but against Western Michigan, this offense, look, between Peyton Thorne and Jaden Reed, you have got chemistry for days, and I agree with you. Peyton Thorne should be one of the better quarterbacks in college football. And he didn't have a bad year last year. It was shaky at times, but for the most part, he was pretty good, and Reed was great. So it'll be great to see them, and they should completely continue what they worked on last year with just the connection that those two have. And then you got, like you said, Wisconsin transfer Jalen Berger, who's coming in, and you also got Jake Broussard from Colorado coming in. So we don't have a Kenneth Walker number one obvious bell cow, but we have two really good, at least what I think should be really good running backs to go with the passing game that I think we're going to be more balanced this year. And I think we have the weapons where we need them, where against a school like Western Michigan, where we should have the advantage in talent across the board, I don't want to see Michigan State struggle like we've seen them do against lesser competition in the past. I want to see them just continue to put the pressure on the opposing defense, where whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, and hopefully, obviously, more touchdowns than field goals. But 75% of the offensive possessions should end with a score for Michigan State, in my mind, in this first game against Western Michigan. I'll be paying attention for that more than anything else as far as individual play, of course, but I want to see the team consistently move the ball down the field and put points on the board. And I think a game like this against a, for lack of a better term, again, lesser opponent, I think they should.
Yeah, they should, and they also have a, not that I guess that you want to see the field goal kicker so much, but they have a kicker battle too. You know, they brought in Ben Patton from Auburn, and then they have 2 or 3 other kickers on the roster. And Mel Tucker in his press conference today on Monday said he feels good about where the kicker is, like the kicker spot is, and that, you know, he thought Ben Patton had a good day, but he didn't name a starter. So I don't know, I guess, how we'll see that, you know, if they have to kick a couple field goals, or is it going to be a different guy? You know, is it going to be a Michigan quarterback situation where one guy's kicking one field goal and then another guy is kicking another? You know, will they bring different guys out for extra points? And if someone misses an extra point, they're just definitely not it. So I'm kind of interested to see how that plays itself out. And, you know, I think that's honestly one of the more interesting battles for Michigan State. Not that I think there's a lot of battles, I guess, regardless. You know, I feel like the roster is probably pretty much set to where it's going to be. But I'm interested to see the kicking battle, even though I don't necessarily want to see the field goal kicker. I'd rather score touchdowns. But, you know, if one of these guys gets an attempt from 50, I wouldn't be, you know, too opposed to seeing that, just to see what happens. You know, does it go in? Does it have the leg power? Does it, you know, is it way off? Does it hit the post? So I'll be interested to see that.
Well, we got time. Again, the Spartans and the Broncos will be kicking it off on Friday night at Spartan Stadium. Our show will record Thursday, so we'll make our predictions there, and you'll get our predictions Friday morning when our show comes out for all of you guys to watch. That's going to do it. Thank you for kicking it with us on Griffin and Bass. For Ryan Griffin, I'm Matt Bassin. As always, Wu-Tang. It's for the children. We'll see y'all real soon. Peace.
See you.